The galaxy shimmered with 1,000 colors, a vast tapestry of stars and planets stretching beyond imagination. On its edges, far from the glowing hubs of alien empires, sat a small blue world called Earth 2. Humans had lived there for generations, descendants of explorers who'd left their ruined home behind. They were a quiet people, or so the Galactic Concord thought. The Concord, a council of towering alien species with scales, wings, and minds sharper than steel, ruled the galaxy with an iron grip. To them, humans were little more than curious ants, hard-working, yes, but primitive and unworthy of real attention. Lila adjusted her goggles, the faint hum of her workshop filling the air. She was an engineer, one of the best Earth 2 had ever seen. Her hands moved quickly over a tangle of wires and glowing crystals, piecing together something the Concord had forbidden, a new kind of energy core. It wasn't like the clunky reactors humans were allowed to use. This one was small, silent, and powerful enough to light a city, or a fleet. She'd been working on it for years, hiding it from the alien inspectors who swept through their colonies every few months. The Concord had rules: no advanced tech, no expansion beyond the outer rim, no trouble. Humans followed those rules. Mostly. In the distance, a low rumble shook the ground. Lila paused, wiping sweat from her brow. She stepped outside her makeshift lab, a metal shack tucked between dusty hills. Above, the sky flickered with streaks of fire, a Concord fleet passing by. Their ships were sleek and massive, all sharp angles and glowing shields. They didn't stop to say hello. They never did. To the aliens, Earth 2 was just another dot on their maps, a place to tax and ignore. "They're gone," said a voice behind her. It was Milo, her assistant. He was young, barely 20, with messy hair and a grin that never faded. "Think they saw anything?" Lila shook her head. "Not yet. But they're getting bolder. Last week, they fined Colony 3 for building an extra water tank. Said it wasn't approved." Milo snorted. "Approved? Like we're kids asking for permission to breathe." "That's how they see us," Lila said, her voice steady but tight. "Kids. Pets. Something to pat on the head and keep in line." She wasn't wrong. For decades, humans had played along. They smiled at the Concord's diplomats, nodded at their demands, and rebuilt every time an alien decree tore their progress apart. Patience was their strength, or so they told themselves. But lately, that patience was wearing thin. The next day, everything changed. Lila was in the colony's meeting hall, a cramped room filled with worried faces, when the news hit. A human research outpost, Station Dawn, had been destroyed. It was a small base, orbiting a nearby gas giant, studying new fuels. The Concord claimed it broke their rules, straying too close to a restricted zone. Their ships had fired without warning, reducing it to ash. 50 people were gone, including families. Captain Tom stood at the front of the hall, his broad shoulders tense. He wasn't a soldier by trade, just a freighter pilot who'd seen too much, but people listened when he spoke. His voice was low and firm. They didn't even send a message. Just opened fire. Said it was our fault for being there. The room erupted in shouts. "They can't do this," someone yelled. "We followed their rules," cried another. Lila stayed quiet, her mind racing. She'd known some of those researchers. They weren't rebels or rule breakers, just people trying to make life better. Tom raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "I sent a protest to the Concord. Their reply came this morning." He held up a datapad and read aloud. "The incident at Station Dawn was regrettable but necessary. Humans must respect galactic boundaries. Further complaints will be ignored." The air grew heavy. Milo slammed his fist on a table. "Regrettable? They killed our people and call it regrettable. They think we'll just take it," Lila said, stepping forward. Her voice cut through the noise. They always have. We bow our heads, rebuild, and wait for the next slap. But this feels different. Tom nodded. It is different. Station Dawn wasn't just an outpost. It was hope. And they crushed it like it was nothing. The meeting stretched late into the night. Some argued for peace, others for fight. Lila listened, her thoughts drifting to the energy core hidden in her lab. It wasn't ready, not fully, but it could change everything. She caught Tom's eye across the room. He gave her a small nod, like he knew what she was thinking. By morning, a plan formed. It wasn't loud or flashy. Humans didn't work that way, not yet. Tom gathered a small crew, pilots, mechanics, anyone with grit. Lila joined them, bringing her half-finished core. They met in an old hangar, its walls patched with rust and hope. The fleet they had was a joke by Concord standards, a dozen freighters, battered and slow. But Lila saw potential. This core, she said, holding up the glowing device, can power these ships better than anything the Concord's seen. It's quiet, too, they won't detect it. We can move fast, hit hard, and vanish. Tom crossed his arms. You're saying we fight? I'm saying we stop waiting, Lila replied. They think we're weak because we're patient. Let's show them what patience builds. The crew murmured, some nervous, some excited. Milo grinned. I'm in. Let's make them regret Station Dawn. Over the next few days, they worked in secret. Lila wired the core into the lead ship, a hulking freighter called Stellar Hope. Sparks flew, tools clattered, and slowly, the fleet came alive. They painted over the ship's markings, turning them into ghosts. Word spread through the colonies, not a shout, but a whisper. People brought supplies, tools, anything they could spare. It wasn't an army, not yet, but it was a start. On the seventh night, Tom stood on a crate, addressing the growing team. The Concorde thinks we'll sit here and cry. They're wrong. We've been patient too long, and they forgot what that means. Patience isn't weakness, it's power, held back until the right moment. That moment's now. Lila watched the stars through the hangar's cracked window. The Concorde fleet still patrolled overhead, oblivious. She thought of Station Dawn, of the lives lost, of the years humans had spent bending under alien rules. Her fingers tightened around a wrench. Patience had built something all right, a spark, ready to ignite. The Stellar Hope hummed to life, its engines glowing faintly with the core's energy. Tom climbed aboard, Lila at his side. First step, he said. We test this. We show them we're not done. As the ship lifted off, silent and swift, the galaxy held its breath. No one knew it yet, not the Concorde, not the other species watching from afar, but the quiet was over. Humanity's patience was fraying, and soon, no species would forget what happened next. The Stellar Hope glided through the void, its engines purring with a strength no one in the Galactic Concorde could have guessed. Lila stood in the engine room, her eyes fixed on the glowing energy core she'd built. It hummed softly, a steady pulse of power that made the old freighter feel alive. She wiped her hands on her jumpsuit, a flicker of pride mixing with the knot of nerves in her stomach. This was it, the first test of everything she'd risked. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, but somewhere out there, the Concorde's eyes were watching. They just didn't know what to look for yet. Captain Tom leaned over the helm, his hands steady on the controls. The bridge was cramped, filled with a mix of patched-up panels and new wiring Lila's crew had slapped together. Milo sat at the scanners, his grin wider than ever. No signals yet, he said, voice buzzing with excitement. They can't see us. Your core's working, Lila. Let's not celebrate too soon, Tom warned, though a small smile tugged at his lips. We're heading for the debris field, Station Dawn's remains. If we can slip past their patrol, we'll know this isn't a fluke. The crew nodded, a quiet determination settling over them. Station Dawn's law still burned in their chests. It wasn't just about proving the tech, it was about showing the Concorde that humans wouldn't roll over anymore. The freighter darted toward the gas giant's rings, where jagged chunks of metal floated like ghosts of their fallen outpost. The Concorde had left a patrol ship there, a sleek cruiser bristling with sensors, to make sure no one came poking around. To the aliens, it was a warning. To Tom and Lila, it was a challenge. As they neared the debris, Milo's scanner beeped. "There it is," he whispered. "Concorde cruiser, dead ahead. They're sweeping the area." Lila joined Tom at the helm, her heart pounding. "If they spot us, this ends before it starts." "They won't," Tom said, his voice calm but firm. "Your core's keeping us dark. We're a shadow to them." The cruiser loomed closer, its hull glinting in the faint light of the gas giant. Its scanners pulsed, waves of energy washing over the debris field. The Stellar Hope slipped between the floating wreckage, its engines barely a whisper. For a moment, the crew held their breath. The cruiser's lights flared, turning toward them, and then away. It kept scanning, oblivious. Milo let out a whoop. "We did it." They didn't even blink. Lila exhaled, a grin breaking through her tension. "It's working. We've got something they don't understand." Tom steered the ship deeper into the field, his eyes on the wreckage. "Let's grab what we can. Anything salvageable, circuits, hull plates, whatever's left. We're building more than one ship now." The crew got to work, using the freighter's grappling arms to haul in pieces of Station Dawn. Every chunk they pulled aboard felt like a quiet rebellion, a way to take back what the Concorde had tried to erase. Hours passed, and the cruiser never stirred. By the time they slipped away, their cargo hold was full, and their spirits were higher than ever. Back on Earth 2, word of the test spread like wildfire. In the hangar, Tom gathered the growing team, now dozens strong, as Lila unpacked the salvaged gear. "This is just the start," he told them. "One ship's not enough. We've got colonies scattered across the rim, and the Concorde squeezing them all. We unite, we build, and we hit back." A woman named Kara, a pilot from Colony 4, stepped forward. "I've got 2 freighters ready to join. They're old, but they'll fly. If your core works like you say, we can make them ghosts too." Lila nodded. "We can. I'll need time to build more cores, but with this salvage, we're closer than ever." The next week was a blur of activity. Hangars across the colonies buzzed with life as humans retrofitted their ships. Lila's core design spread, each team adapting it to their vessels. Freighters, haulers, even a few ancient shuttles became part of the fleet. They worked in secret, hiding their progress from the Concorde's inspectors. The aliens still swooped by, issuing fines and threats, but they didn't see the fire growing beneath the surface. Then came the protest. Tom sent a message to the Concorde's regional council, a towering station orbiting a nearby star. It was simple: rebuild Station Dawn, or explain why you destroyed it. The response came fast, broadcast across every human colony. A Concorde official, an insect-like figure with clicking mandibles, appeared on the screens. "Your outpost violated restricted space," it hissed. "Your complaints are childish. Cease this noise, or face consequences." The colonies erupted in anger. On Earth 2, people gathered in the streets, shouting at the sky. Tom watched from the hangar, his jaw tight. "Childish," he muttered. "They think we're throwing a tantrum." Lila clenched her fists. "They've been laughing at us for years. Let's give them something to notice." That night, the fleet made its move. 5 ships, powered by Lila's cores, slipped out of Earth 2's orbit. Their target was a Concorde supply line, a chain of drones ferrying goods between alien worlds. It wasn't a military target, just a lifeline for their outer bases. Tom wanted to send a message without starting a war. Not yet. The Stellar Hope led the pack, cutting through space like a blade. Milo tracked the drones on his scanner. "They're slow," he said. "No escorts. They don't expect trouble out here." "Good," Tom replied. "Let's keep it that way. Hit and run, nothing fancy." The ambush was quick. The human ships swooped in, their silent engines giving no warning. They fired grapples, snagging the drones and dragging them off course. A few shots from patched-up cannons, salvaged from Station Dawn, crippled the drone's navigation. Within minutes, the supply line was a mess, drifting helplessly toward an asteroid belt. The fleet vanished before the Concorde could respond. Back on Earth 2, the crew watched the fallout. Concorde channels buzzed with confusion. "Unknown vessels disrupted Sector 7, a report said. "No signatures detected. Investigation underway." Milo laughed. "They don't even know it was us." "They will," Tom said, his voice steady. "This is just the spark. We've got their attention now." The Concorde's response came the next day. A patrol fleet, 3 cruisers, arrived near Earth 2, broadcasting a warning. "Unauthorized activity will not be tolerated," the lead ship declared. "Surrender the culprits, or we'll search every colony." Tom gathered the team in the hangar. "They're rattled," he said. "They don't know what hit them, but they're scared enough to show force." Lila crossed her arms. "Good. Let them come. We've got more ships ready, and they still can't see us." Kara grinned. "I say we hit them again. Bigger this time. Show them we're not backing down." The room buzzed with agreement. Tom looked at Lila, his eyes searching. "Can we do it?" She thought of Station Dawn, of the Concorde sneers, of the years humans had swallowed their pride. "Yes," she said. "We've been patient too long. Let's show them what that patience built." The fleet grew. 10 ships became 20, then 30. Colonies sent pilots, mechanics, even kids who'd grown up dreaming of the stars. Lila worked day and night, her hands raw from building cores. The hangar became a fortress of hope, alive with the clatter of tools and the hum of engines. On the 10th day, they struck again. This time, it was a Concorde relay station, a small outpost beaming orders to their patrols. The fleet descended like shadows, cutting power with precision strikes. The station went dark, its signals dead. The humans left a message scrawled on its hull, "For Station Dawn." The galaxy began to whisper. Other species, long silent under Concorde rule, watched from afar. On Earth 2, the people cheered, their voices rising into the night. The Concorde wasn't laughing anymore. Their patrols doubled, their threats grew sharper, but they couldn't find the humans, not yet. Tom stood on the Stellar Hope's bridge, staring at the stars. "They're waking up," he said. "They know something's changed." Lila joined him, the weight of their rebellion settling in. "They've underestimated us forever. Now they're starting to see." The spark had ignited. Across the rim, human colonies buzzed with defiance. The fleet grew stronger, faster, bolder. The Concorde scrambled to understand, their arrogance cracking like thin ice. No one knew how far this would go, but one thing was clear: humanity's patience was gone, and the galaxy would feel the flames. The stars burned brighter now, as if the galaxy itself sensed the shift. On Earth 2, the air crackled with energy, hope, fear, and a fire that wouldn't die. The human fleet had struck twice, leaving the Galactic Concorde stumbling over their own tails. Supply lines crippled, a relay station silenced, the aliens weren't laughing anymore. Their patrols swarmed the outer rim, sleek ships cutting through space, hunting for the ghosts that dared defy them. But humanity wasn't hiding now. They were ready to turn the tide. Lila stood in the hangar, her hands stained with grease as she finished wiring another energy core. The Stellar Hope loomed behind her, its hull patched but proud. Around it, dozens of ships hummed, freighters, shuttles, even a few mining rigs, all retrofitted with her tech. The fleet had grown to 50, a patchwork armada built from scraps and stubbornness. She looked up as Tom approached, his face set with a quiet resolve. "They're coming," he said, voice low. Scanners picked up a Concorde fleet, 20 cruisers, heading straight for us. "They're calling it a pacification mission." Lila wiped her hands on her jumpsuit. "How long?" "2 days, maybe less," Tom replied. "They're mad now. We hit them too hard." "Good," she said, a spark in her eyes. "Let them come. We've got something for them." The hangar buzzed with activity. Kara darted between ships, barking orders to her pilots. Milo hauled ammo crates, his grin unshaken. The colonies had rallied, every outpost, every settlement sending what they could. Kids too young to fight brought water and food, their eyes wide with awe. This wasn't just Earth 2's fight anymore. It was humanity's. Tom gathered the crew that night, standing on the Stellar Hope's ramp. The crowd stretched beyond the hangar doors, faces lit by flickering lights. "The Concorde thinks they can crush us," he said, his voice carrying over the murmur. "They've got numbers, tech, everything we don't. But we've got something they never counted on, us. We've been patient, we've been smart, and we've built something they can't stop. This is our stand." A cheer rose, raw and fierce. Lila felt it in her bones, a unity she'd never known. She stepped up beside Tom. "These ships aren't just metal," she said. "They're ours, made from our sweat, our losses, our hope. The Concorde doesn't know what's coming." The plan was simple but bold. They wouldn't wait for the cruisers to reach Earth 2. The fleet would meet them halfway, in the asteroid belt near the gas giant's rings. It was a maze of rock and debris, perfect for ambushes. Lila's cores kept their ships invisible to scanners, and the humans had one more trick, weapons cobbled together from Concorde wrecks. Plasma cannons, shield disruptors, tech the aliens thought humans couldn't touch. They'd been wrong. The fleet launched at dawn, 50 ships slipping into the void like whispers. The Stellar Hope led, Tom at the helm, Lila in the engine room, Kara commanding a wing of fighters. Milo manned the scanners, his fingers flying over the controls. "They're close," he called. 20 cruisers, just beyond the belt. "They're in formation, tight, like they're expecting a frontal attack." "They won't get one," Tom said. "Scatter the fleet." We hit from all sides. The ships fanned out, weaving through the asteroids. The Concorde fleet appeared on the horizon, massive, gleaming, a wall of power. Their lead cruiser broadcast a message, its voice cold and mechanical. "Human vessels, surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. Your colonies will be spared if you comply." Tom switched off the comms. "They still think we're begging. Let's wake them up." The battle began with a flicker. A human shuttle darted from behind an asteroid, firing a salvaged plasma bolt. It struck a cruiser's shield, sparking a flare of light. The Concorde ships turned, cannons blazing, but the shuttle was already gone, vanishing into the rocks. Then another ship struck, a freighter unloading disruptors that flickered the aliens' shields. The cruisers fired back, their shots smashing asteroids into dust, but the humans were too fast, too slippery. Lila watched from the Stellar Hope as the chaos unfolded. "They're confused," she said over the comms. "They can't lock on." "Keep it that way," Tom replied. "Kara, take your wing left. Milo, signal the haulers, hit their rear." Kara's fighters swooped in, small but deadly, peppering the cruisers with pinpoint strikes. The haulers lumbered from behind, unleashing a barrage of makeshift mines, chunks of metal rigged with explosives. 3 cruisers veered to avoid them, crashing into each other in a shower of sparks. The Concorde's perfect formation cracked. On the alien flagship, the commander, a towering creature with silver scales, snarled at his crew. "Find them," he roared. "These primitives can't outmatch us." But doubt crept into his voice. The humans weren't fighting like primitives. They were everywhere and nowhere, striking and fading like shadows. The Stellar Hope made its move. Tom piloted it straight into the fray, weaving through cannon fire. Lila's corps pushed the engines beyond their limits, the ship a blur. They targeted a cruiser's engines, firing a disruptor that shorted its shields. A second shot, a plasma cannon, tore through its hull. The cruiser spun, leaking fire, and crashed into an asteroid. The fleet cheered over the comms. "One down." Milo shouted. 19 to go. The Concorde fought back hard. Their cannons lit the belt, turning rocks to vapor. A human shuttle took a direct hit, vanishing in a flash. Another freighter lost its wing, limping back to cover. But the humans didn't break. They adapted. Kara's fighters drew fire, letting the haulers flank the enemy. Tom's ship danced through the chaos, every shot a lesson in defiance. Halfway through, Lila unveiled her next surprise. "Tom, activate the pulse," she said, flipping a switch in the engine room. A low hum built, then a wave of energy burst from the Stellar Hope. It wasn't a weapon, not exactly. It scrambled the Concorde sensors, turning their screens to static. The cruisers faltered, firing blindly. "Now!" Tom barked. The fleet closed in, hammering the dazed ships. 2 more cruisers fell, one shredded by mines, another gutted by plasma. The aliens' numbers dropped to 17, then 15. Panic seeped into their comms, garbled orders, frantic cries. On Earth 2, screens flickered with the battle's feed. People gathered, watching their fleet, hold its own. Kids pointed at the sky, shouting. Elders, who'd lived through decades of Concorde rule, wiped tears from their eyes. This wasn't just a fight. It was a statement. The Concorde commander ordered a retreat, his voice trembling. "Regroup at the relay point. These humans are." The transmission cut off as Kara's wing took out his comms array. The remaining cruisers turned, limping away, but the humans weren't done. They chased, picking off stragglers. By the time the aliens escaped, only 10 ships remained, half their force, battered and broken. The fleet returned to Earth 2, cheers echoing through the comms. The hangar was a storm of celebration, hugs, shouts, laughter. Tom climbed from the Stellar Hope, his uniform torn but his head high. Lila joined him, her hands shaking from adrenaline. "We did it," she said, almost disbelieving. "We're not done," Tom replied, but he smiled. "They're scared now." "That's a start." Word spread beyond the rim. Other species tapped into the battle's recordings, grainy footage of human ships outwitting a Concorde fleet. Whispers grew, the humans fought back. The humans won. On distant worlds, oppressed colonies began to stir, their own dreams flickering to life. The Concorde Council met in their shining station, their voices sharp with anger and fear. "This is an uprising," one said, wings buzzing. "They're primitives, how?" "They've been hiding," another hissed. "Their patience, it wasn't weakness. It was a mask." The commander from the battle stood before them, scales dull with shame. "We underestimated them," he admitted. "Their ships, their weapons, they're not what we thought." The council's leader slammed a claw on the table. "Then we crushed them. No more games." Back on Earth 2, Tom and Lila watched the stars. The victory felt good, but they knew what was coming. "They'll hit harder next time," Tom said. "Let them," Lila replied. "We've got more to show." The tide had turned. Humanity's patience had forged a strength the galaxy couldn't ignore. The Concorde reeled, their arrogance shattered, and across the stars, a new story began, one of resilience, ingenuity, and a fire that wouldn't fade. The aftermath of the asteroid belt battle hung over Earth too like a storm waiting to break. The human fleet had returned triumphant, their patchwork ships scarred but unbroken. 50 vessels had faced 20 Concorde cruisers and sent half of them limping away. The colonies buzzed with pride, people who'd spent generations bowing to alien rules now stood taller, their voices louder. But Lila knew, as she tightened the last bolt on a new energy core, that the Concorde wouldn't let this go. They'd come back, and they'd come hard. Tom stood on a hill overlooking the hangar, the stellar hope gleaming under the twin suns. His eyes traced the horizon, where the stars hid the enemy's next move. Kara joined him, her pilot's jacket patched with burns. "Scanners are picking up chatter," she said. "They're massing a fleet, bigger than before. They want to end us." "They can try," Tom replied, his voice steady. "We've got the colonies behind us now. Every ship, every hand, we're in this together." Inside the hangar, Lila briefed the crew. The air smelled of metal and sweat, alive with the clatter of tools. "They'll expect us to run or beg," she said, holding up the glowing core. "But we've got more than stealth now. This can power shields, strong ones. Not enough for every ship, but enough to give us a backbone." Milo grinned, hauling a crate of salvaged cannons. "Shields, guns, and guts. That's our recipe." The Concorde's response came faster than anyone expected. A fleet of 40 ships, cruisers, destroyers, even a dreadnought, dropped out of hyperspace near Earth 2's orbit. Their message blared across every channel, cold and final: "Surrender your leaders and dismantle your fleet, or we reduce your world to dust." Tom broadcast a reply from the Stellar Hope, his voice calm but edged with steel. "We've got a counteroffer. Leave our space, or we'll show you what dust looks like." The Concorde didn't wait. Their ships opened fire, beams of plasma slicing through the atmosphere. Earth 2's defenses, old orbital guns and makeshift shields, flared to life, absorbing the first volley. The human fleet launched, 50 strong, darting into the fray. The Stellar Hope led, its new shields glowing under Lila's core, deflecting a blast that would have cracked it in half. The battle was chaos. Concorde ships fired in unison, their precision deadly, but the humans were unpredictable. Kara's fighters weaved through the barrage, striking weak points with salvaged disruptors. Haulers dropped mines that erupted in showers of shrapnel, forcing the aliens to scatter. The Stellar Hope took the dreadnought head-on, its shields holding as Tom baited it deeper into the fleet's trap. Lila worked frantically in the engine room, rerouting power to keep the shields alive. "We can't take much more," she shouted over the comms. "Hold it together," Tom shot back. "We've got one shot at this." The shot was their biggest gamble yet. While the fleet distracted the Concorde, a team of shuttles, loaded with every spare core Lila had built, slipped behind enemy lines. Milo led them, his voice crackling through the static. "In position. Ready when you are." Tom gave the signal. The shuttles unleashed their payload, a pulse of raw energy, amplified by the core's combined strength. It wasn't a weapon to destroy, it was a disruption wave, designed to overload the Concorde systems. The alien fleet stuttered, shields flickered, engines stalled, weapons went dark. For a precious moment, they were helpless. "Now!" Tom roared. The human fleet pounced. Cannons tore through unshielded hulls, mines shredded stragglers, and Kara's fighters danced through the wreckage. The dreadnought, caught in the pulse, took a direct hit to its core, erupting in a fireball that lit the sky. 15 Concorde ships fell in minutes, their formation crumbling. On the alien flagship, the commander, a hulking figure with golden eyes, watched in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. They're primitives, how? His screens showed chaos, human ships everywhere, relentless, fearless. For the first time, he felt something he'd never known, doubt. The humans pressed their advantage. The Stellar Hope rammed a cruiser, its shields absorbing the impact, then fired point-blank, splitting the enemy in two. Kara's wing took down another, her voice a victorious shout over the comms. The Concorde fleet, once 40 strong, dwindled to 20, then 10. They turned to flee, but the humans chased, their fury a tidal wave. Below, Earth 2's people watched the sky burn. Kids cheered as streaks of light marked falling Concorde ships. Elders gripped each other's hands, tears streaming down weathered faces. This wasn't just a win, it was a rebirth. The battle ended with a whimper. The last Concorde ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving debris and silence. The human fleet, battered, leaking air, but alive, limped back to orbit. Cheers erupted across the colonies, a sound that echoed through every settlement on the rim. Tom climbed from the Stellar Hope, his face bruised but beaming. Lila met him, her jumpsuit torn, her eyes bright. "We held," she said, voice shaking with relief. "We did more than hold," Tom replied. "We won." The Concorde Council convened in their shining station, their chamber a storm of panic. "They've humiliated us," one hissed, feathers ruffling. "A rabble of humans, how?" "They've been planning," another said, voice trembling. "Their patience, it was a weapon. We pushed too far." The commander from the battle stood before them, his pride shattered. "They fought like nothing I've seen. Not with strength alone, with cunning, with heart. We can't crush them. Not now." A message arrived, broadcast from Earth 2. Tom's face filled their screens, flanked by Lila and Kara. "We're done bending," he said simply. "You want peace? Give us respect. Give us equality. Or we keep fighting. Your choice." The council froze. For centuries, they'd ruled unchallenged. Now, a species they dismissed as weak stared them down, unbroken and unafraid. They debated for hours, but the truth was clear, humanity had changed the game. Days later, a Concorde envoy arrived, tentative, humbled. They offered terms, no more taxes, no more bans, a seat on the council. It wasn't surrender, but it was close. Tom and Lila signed the agreement, their hands steady. The colonies erupted in celebration, fires lit the night, songs filled the air. The galaxy took notice. Across the stars, other species replayed the battle footage, humans in their ragtag ships, outsmarting a titan. On distant worlds, oppressed voices grew bolder, inspired by the humans who turned patience into power. Tales spread, no species will forget the moment when humans lost their patience. It wasn't just a story, it was a spark. Back on Earth 2, Lila stood in her workshop, the energy core still glowing on her bench. Milo poked his head in, grinning. "What's next, boss? Another core? A bigger fleet?" She smiled, looking out at the stars. "Next, we explore. We build. We show them who we really are." Tom joined them, his gaze distant but warm. "They thought we were nothing. Now they'll remember us forever." The fleet grew. New ships rose from the hangars, not just for war, but for discovery. Kids who'd watched the battle dreamed of piloting them, their imaginations wild with possibility. The Rim, once a prison, became a frontier. Humanity's patience had forged a legacy, not of rage, but of resilience, ingenuity, and hope. Years later, a young alien from a far-off world visited Earth 2. He'd heard the stories, seen the vids. Standing before the Stellar Hope, now a monument, he asked an elder, "How did you do it? How did you beat them?" The elder, hair gray but eyes sharp, pointed to the ship. "We waited," she said. "We learned. And when the time came, we fought with everything we had. Patience isn't weakness, it's strength, saved for the right moment. The galaxy remembered. No species forgot. And humanity, once the Concorde's pets, became its inspiration, a tale of what happens when the quiet ones rise.